Om Shri Sai Ram. Chapter 7. On 22nd December 2004, Ma's father passed away peacefully in his sleep. It was early morning on the extremely auspicious Vaikunta Ekadasi day. Ma was sitting in the mandir after completing Namasmaranam and was reading the book Tapovanam. She was going through the portion in which it is mentioned that on this holy day Lord Narayana grants darshan to his devotees at the gates of Vaikuntha, his divine abode. Ma was deeply engrossed in the book, trying to imagine in her mind what Vaikuntha would be like. Just then the phone rang. Feeling apprehensive as one does if the phone rings at an odd hour like that, she rushed out to take the call. It was her elder brother from New Delhi. He said, "Neelu, very sad news. Daddy has passed away in his sleep." In North India, there is heavy fog in the mornings at this time of the year. Many flights as well as trains are either delayed or cancelled. She managed to catch the afternoon flight but could not reach in time for the cremation. At that time, Hema's children, Ishan and Ishna, were living with them in Lucknow. Ishna was only 4 years old. Ma came to know that she was crying for her grandmother, so she returned to Lucknow the next morning. She decided that she would go back to New Delhi to attend the ceremony that was to be held on the 13th day. The next morning, after Namasmaranam, Ma sat in the mandir, remembering her father. She felt a deep regret that she had not been able to get a last glimpse of him. At that moment, the mandir lit up with a divine glow, as it does when Swami comes. She lifted her eyes. Swami was sitting on his sofa, looking at her with deep compassion. He called her to him and said, "Come, my child, have darshan of your father." And lo and behold, in her mandir, sitting next to each other on 2 pedestals covered with a bright red cloth, she saw Shirdi Baba and her father. They were both dressed in the purest of white clothes. She stared in shock and awe. Then Shirdi Baba said, "Don't worry, he is with me." In the same manner in which they had appeared, Baba and her father disappeared from her sight. Soon after that, Swami left. Early next morning, on the 25th of December, Swami came to the mandir to give darshan to Ma. He looked at her with concern. Then he said, "Come, take the tickets." Saying this, he gave her 2 train tickets. Ma looked at the tickets in her hand. She saw that they were the tickets she would need to travel to New Delhi and back for the religious ceremony to be held on the 13th day. It is very difficult to get confirmed tickets for train travel at such a short notice. Ma's eyes were moist with tears. Slowly she looked up at her lord. He was smiling. The next day, Hema, who was living in Toronto at that time, reached Lucknow. After offering her salutations to Swami in the mandir and meeting the family, she asked to see the tickets that Swami had given to Ma. Hema examined the tickets carefully. Both tickets had been booked on the 20th of November. Ma's father had passed away on the 22nd of December. So, actually, the tickets had been booked more than a month before he had passed away. The date of travel from Lucknow to New Delhi was the 1st of January 2005. The 13th day ceremony was to be held in New Delhi on the 2nd of January. Swami had booked her back for the 9th of January. Hema was intrigued. She went online and checked with the PNR number on the site of the Indian Railways. It was a confirmed ticket. On the 1st of January, Ma packed a small bag with a few things and left for the station. Everyone, including the children, went to see her off. It was extremely cold on the first day of the year. While uncle and the children did not venture out of the car, Hema went to settle her mother in the train. She went to the reservation chart to check if Ma's name was there. Yes, it was. Sai Ma, it said. But they had not realized that she was booked in the general sleeper class, where passengers are not provided with bedding for the night. She was not carrying a blanket and it was very, very cold. Hema had tears in her eyes, but Ma was unruffled. The Lord who had arranged everything, will He not provide for her? She said. Ma was lying on her berth with just a shawl to cover her. Having had a long and tiring day, she soon slept off. It was around 3 o'clock at night when she woke up, feeling uneasy as though she was being watched. Slowly, she sat up. An old man, wrapped from head to toe in a thick blanket, was sitting on the edge of her berth. Her heart skipped a beat. Everyone else was fast asleep. She gathered courage and asked, "Kaun hai? Who is it?" In muffled tones, the old man said, "TTE, Train Ticket Examiner." Ma said in Hindi, "Please go away. You are not supposed to sit here." As soon as the words were out of her mouth, the old man vanished. Ma froze. "Baba!" Later, Swami told her that Shirdi Baba was traveling with her to ensure her safety. The train reached Delhi at 7 o'clock in the morning. Her brother had come to receive her at the station. In her family, consisting of her parents, 2 brothers and 4 sisters, no one else had faith in Swami as God. As soon as Ma reached there, amazing miracles and manifestations began to take place in her parents' house. They had not witnessed anything like this before. There was vibhuti and kunkuma on the idols in their mandir. Once, when Ma got up from a chair, they saw honey where she had been sitting. She walked to the kitchen and left a trail of vibhuti behind her. Ma's father had been very fond of fresh homemade lemonade. He had planted a lemon tree in the garden outside their house. As is well known, the lemon tree takes many years before it begins to bear fruit, and it had not borne any in his lifetime. The day Ma reached there, 3 large lemons appeared on the tree for the first time. Her younger brother picked a lemon, made the drink and kept it in a glass near their father's picture. After some time, there was no lemonade in the glass. On the 9th of January, when it was time for her to go back to Lucknow, everyone in her family accompanied her to the station. Her younger brother bought a box of sweets for her grandchildren from a sweet shop nearby. As he was handing it over to her, everyone gasped. The box was dripping honey. They looked at Ma. Honey was flowing from her head, down her neck, and back. She was surrounded by her family, so the other passengers in the compartment could not make out what was happening. They must have surely wondered at the animated whispers and the muted gasps. Her brothers and sisters were very moved and got off reluctantly as the train began to move out of the station. Soon after that, the living room in her parents' home was cleared of the furniture and converted into a shrine with many beautiful images of Swami and Shirdi Baba. Om Sai Ram. Ma's father passed away on 22nd December 2004. It happened all of a sudden. Then one day Ma was in the mandir and Swami came to her and gave her train tickets to New Delhi for a ritual to be held on 2nd January. It was a holiday season. She couldn't have got her tickets at the last minute. I reached Lucknow from Toronto and looked at the tickets and I was intrigued. The booking date on the ticket read as 20th November 2004, whereas my grandfather passed away after a month. Of course, Swami knew what was to happen. I went on the railway site to confirm the PNR, the railway reservation number, which I found to be correct. With a lot of courage, I went to drop off Ma at the railway station. I started looking for her name on the list, and to my utter surprise, she was booked under the name Sai Ma with seat number 9, Swami's number. I was out of words. not because he was there for her, but because not a single moment was there when he was not there for her. We must never feel we are alone. There are always footsteps that we can hear along with us. Those are Swami's footsteps. Just in case we are able to hear only one, we needn't worry. Those are Swami's, as he is holding us in his arms in times of need. Shared by Hema Gulati, Toronto. Om Sai Ram. First of all, my Koti Pranam at the lotus feet of my Almighty God, Swami, our Sai, who has blessed our family and transformed us through my sister Neelam to take the path of sincerity and love towards him. My first experience of Swami was in Lucknow when I had gone with my brother-in-law for one of his relatives' funeral. Later in the evening, I visited my sister Neelam for dinner. That is the moment when she showed me some sort of ash, vibhuti, coming out of almost all the pictures of gods and goddesses in her house. I was very much amazed to see all this, but I had heard quite a few stories of such vibhuti coming out at different places. It was very hard to believe, but it was my first experience of seeing it with my own eyes. When I came back to Delhi, I narrated the story to my parents and family members. Everyone was surprised, and as time passed, we all forgot about it. Many years passed, but my sister's life was changed. Now she was known as Sai Ma, a name given to her by her beloved Swami. Years passed, and on the death of my father on 22nd December 2004, around 4:30 a.m., I got a call from my brother that our father had expired. That day was Vaikunt Ekadasi, considered as a very auspicious day. It is said that anyone who passes away on this day gets moksha. I immediately rushed there. We were all trying to console our mother as she was very much depressed. My sister from Lucknow reached by flight the same evening, but was not able to stay longer. She had to leave the very next day since she had left her grandchildren all alone. Later, when my sister reached Delhi, on the tickets which Swami had arranged, things changed. Though we were mourning, but at the same time we were feeling Swami's presence. There was a beautiful fragrance all over the house. Vibhuti and honey were coming from different places. We were all extremely astonished to see what was happening, and we were chanting the name Om Sai Ram. It was such a delightful feeling that one cannot describe, as if we all had lost all our senses. Now, on the day she had to return to Lucknow, I had gone to drop her at New Delhi station. But on our way, we stopped to buy some laddus, a sweet preparation as prasad to be taken by her back home. On reaching the station, to our surprise, we found that the box of laddus were overflowing with honey. We were all very much astonished as to how all this happened. It was winter and my sister was wearing a coat, and as she put her hand in her pocket, to our surprise, when she took her hand out, it was flowing with honey. The honey was pouring from her head. On seeing this, tears were pouring from my eyes. I had no words to say, but was chanting Om Sai Ram. This is the story as to how Baba actually entered our house and blessed us. During that time, I was financially very much disturbed. Sai Ma came to my place and said that she wanted to sing a bhajan in my temple, which was situated in one corner of the living room. As the bhajan ended, we felt that something dropped in the room twice. We realized as she picked up, one was a small silver Lord Ganesha pendant and the other was a small munga, a coral stone. She told me that the pendant can be put in a chain and worn by my wife, and the munga stone can be embedded in a ring and be worn by myself, and thereafter she left for my brother's house. From there she called me and said that she has noticed the marble slab in my temple had a crack. and I should get it replaced, and suggested that the temple be shifted to a northeast direction. We decided to convert the study room of the children to the temple since they were all grown up. Surprisingly, the room was in the perfect northeast direction. However, the room now needed complete renovation. Everything was ready. We slept after midnight and were looking forward for the coming morning to perform the puja, which was scheduled to start at 5 a.m. It was around 4 a.m. when my elder daughter woke up and entered the temple and screamed with excitement. What we saw was amazing. The whole temple was sprinkled with vibhuti. What was more amazing, a small idol of Lord Vishnu had appeared along with a small shivling resting on top of the lotus feet, covered with vibhuti and a small coconut. While Sai Ma performed the puja, a holy necklace dropped on her lap. It was a joyful experience for all of us. Baba has really blessed us and our family. My financial position improved a lot. My daughter was happily married and there was peace in our house. Our sister Saima has transformed us. I am sure our family must have been attached to God in some or the other way in our previous birth. I once again bow to my Swami for all his blessings he has showered upon our family. Shared by Virendra Chopra, New Delhi. I first heard of Swami through my sister Neelam, Sai Ma to all of us, residing at Lucknow. She told us many miraculous things about Swami and had many fascinating stories to tell. In February 2005, I visited Sai Nilayam, my younger sister's residence at Lucknow. Before leaving Delhi, I decided that I would complete reading Sai's Satcharita in one day. During my train journey, I read almost half the book and continued reading on, reaching Sai Nilayam. I went to the mandir to pay my respects. As I stood in front of Swami's photograph, to my utter amazement, I noticed Swami's hand moving in blessing and greeting. It was an unforgettable moment in my life. I continued reading the book at Sai Nilayam. I recall very vividly that I took a break from my reading for a while and then went back to continue when to my utter amazement, a japamala was placed on my book. Initially, I was shaken, but then Sai Ma told me that this mala is a blessing from Swami for me. I did complete my book by late night. I was further blessed with a silver coin, a gemstone, and lots of vibhuti which had appeared in my book. I experienced quite a number of incidents where I felt the omnipresence of Bhagavan Baba. I distinctly remember that the bhajans would play without any cassette in the recorder. The day I was leaving Sai Nilayam and about to seek Swami's permission and blessings, my favorite bhajan, Hari Narayana, started playing continuously. All this had a very strong impact on my mind. I was convinced that the grace of God and kindness had touched my heart and converted me into a different spiritual person. Only the language of the heart can express my gratitude to my Lord for entering my life. In early August 2008, I got a call from my niece, Hema Gulati, living in Canada, to say that Swami had appeared in her dream and has directed her to inform me to get my medical checkups done immediately. To me, it was a command from my Lord, and accordingly next morning I went to the hospital for my medical checkup. We were shocked to learn during checkups that I had 90% blockage at my carotid, which doctors felt was in a critical state and needed immediate surgery. While I was in hospital on Mahashivratri, Lord Shiva gave darshan to Sai Ma at Sai Nilayam and blessed with holy water. This water reached me in hospital just few hours before I was to be operated. In the operation theatre, as I was being prepared for the operation, a nurse came with Swami's photograph which she placed under my pillow. I was now very sure of the divine presence in the theatre and was devoid of any fear. The whole process went off smoothly by the grace of Swami. My life has changed completely. The happiness that has come with Swami in my life is very intense. I wonder what my life would have been if I had not come into Bhagwan's fold. The true miracle that happened to me is my total inner transformation. I pray that Swami continues to shower his grace on millions of his devotees for all times to come. I seek Swami's blessings to continue my life under his shade until my last breath. Shared by Ashok Chopra, New Delhi. Om Shri Sai Ram.